They all have amazing insights to share with you today. So we're going to be kicking it off first with Vanessa. So Vanessa is a product designer at Squarespace. She leads a core layouts team delivering experiences for their foundational website builder. Her discovery of mobile consumer products came after working at Microsoft, launching Fast AF's e-commerce app and creation of tools for Pinterest creators. Her favorite collaboration happens with the whole team: engineers, researchers, designers, and most of all, content strategists. Since childhood, she carried a passion for motion, illustration, and gaming. Currently, she chips away at JavaScript and Blender. So I'm going to go ahead and share this with Vanessa. So we're going to be following her. I'm going to mute, and Vanessa, take it away.
Hi everyone, super nice to meet you. Super excited to just share a couple real tips that I've learned that I have taken personally to break into the design industry. And I think today I'm just going to really talk about how important your work is. Just a little bit of an introduction. I know Maggie has already talked about before. I really just had one portfolio that showcased all my work that got me into these spaces. So when I was interning at Microsoft, that was like a DM, like a recruiter reached out because they're like, "Hey, I saw your portfolio. Would you like to interview?" So I, worked at some B2B, worked on solving for B2B solutions. I was like, "Yeah, it's not really me." So then I decided to go consumer route, see like how startups felt, and I was like, "Oh, that's also still not for me." But I think I'm pretty happy right now with where I'm at, designing for consumer experiences at like slightly larger companies. And I just hope that my story can kind of resonate with the people that are a little bit more shy or on the quieter side, or they find it difficult to network. While like my friends here will talk about how to connect with your community and how to nail the interviewing process, I just wanted to say that it's super possible to get into where you want to be and also do the type of work that you want to do just by cold applying, and that's through your work. So as a student, I hated applying to fellowships. I avoided campus events and school events and career fairs like the plague. So I really just found my niche in cold applying. Yeah, Kaz, go introverts. Exactly. So I know this is kind of obvious, but recruiters, when they're looking for people to hire, they're going to reach out because of your portfolio, especially if you're like a younger or early career designer. I know that people will reach out to you as you are more of a veteran in the industry just because of your resume, but you can kind of kickstart that process as a student by telling and showing recruiters that your craft and your process essentially say that you have potential to become a really great designer. So just a couple examples. Fast AF, which is a startup in Microsoft, they reached out, and then Pinterest and Squarespace, they're like, "Hey, we saw your portfolio. We'd like to schedule a call with the recruiter." So as superficial as it sounds, I will say design and visuals matter because you are going to become a designer when you're working with your team. You guys are all trying to problem solve together. Your medium is just your craft and your design. So what a recruiter can tell just as a foundational insight is hey, do you know your visual foundations, like your typography? Does your information grouping make sense? Do you have a good sense of color? Because all of that is kind of foundational and needed when you're trying to work with your team. So I would really emphasize visuals, get your foot in the door. And that's, I think, a huge tool in order to just get started and get noticed, because after that you can not breeze through the interview, but I have often heard from my friends getting an interview or an email from the recruiter is often the hardest part. So you have your portfolio as your tool. Definitely take advantage of it. Get creative, show off your skills. If you like motion, show that you like motion. If you like visual design, really emphasize or capitalize on that. I will also say that I have had more responses just when I've focused on one area of work that I want to do. I don't know if some of you are interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary designers, but it helps the recruiter understand what type of work that you like to do if you can focus on one flat platform or one type of medium, because they are also looking for somebody with very specific experiences and requirements. So just present what type of work you want to do and where you want to go, so you can like set your future self up in the best way. So how do you create a really cool and unique portfolio? I would say don't be afraid to take inspiration. These are like a couple of resources that I personally have found to be fail proof because or foolproof, because they like always update with new content. So go on awards, go on Cofolios, go on Behance, go on Super High. They just have like so much content from other designers. If you've read the book Steal Like an Artist, or if you haven't read it, I would recommend it. So it just makes you feel less bad about taking inspiration from a lot of people and making yourself stand out. Once you do have like fun creating your portfolio, and once you've designed it, it's like, how do you get it on the web? You know, not everybody has had experience learning how to code with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So there are resources out there for you. ReadyMag, which I think Gabe uses, isn't like near free website builder. Our program, new media at RIT, like always recommended Simplest, which is like a one-time subscription. Or if you have any like developer friends, feel free to ask them. The developers I've talked to, they're kind of like excited to, you know, create a cool project if it's available. I know like Discords and Slack groups are pretty popular nowadays. So if you want to find like different kinds of people, definitely like join a Slack or Discord community. I personally haven't, but that's something I've done. Maybe don't even join a designer Slack. Maybe join like a developer Slack if you're looking for somebody to like help you create your portfolio. Now that we have like the whole visual and first impression part down, I do want to say that like your case studies also speak for how well you can like problem solve and communicate with your team. I would say again, recruiters, they only spend like max maybe 6 to 20 seconds looking through your portfolio. So I'd say like even after the landing page, you want to get to the point of what your work is on the case study page. So recipe that I followed is like within maybe the first scroll, it's good to have your brief, what the project is about, or context of the problem, and then a description of what your solutions are, and then get to the meat of like what your solution actually is. So I think this like 3-part recipe has worked for me, because I've noticed that in order to get them to scroll, or get the recruiters to scroll through your process, they have to validate if it's even worth it. So if you can just get a really condensed like brief, problem statement, and then show the work that you actually did, which are your solutions, then that's like a strong validator for them to continue like scrolling through your process and be like, hey, this is probably a good candidate to start talking to. So here's just, I don't know if you want a screenshot, but this is just like my recipe or like my formula. And yeah, once, oh, here, sorry, a little bit of a brain fart, but what has helped me also understand a good, strong case study is by looking at the case studies of designers I admire. So companies I previously wanted to go to, like Twitter and Discord, found some cool designers there and looked at their case studies. And, you know, I tried to adopt like their method of the language that they use and how concisely they spoke and how soon they presented their solutions. If you don't have a lot of UX experience, I have a couple of friends who actually transferred into design from like other backgrounds by taking boot camp, so that's also really good. But I just wanted to say that like your portfolio really helps you pinpoint the problem. And I think it's good to be honest and self-aware about what areas are missing. So here's like 2 basically if then statements that I've been following. If I'm not getting interviews, then there's something wrong with my portfolio, and that there's something that I can be improving there. If I'm getting interviews, but there's something wrong and I'm not passing interviews, then I should probably be focused on like my process and my deck and how I speak about my work. And my friends here have some really great advice on how to speak about your work there. So I think, yeah, like your portfolio, if you nail it down, TLDR, it just helps you kind of segment out what areas I can be improving on. And I hope that can work for you guys too. I will be passing it on to Nasha.
Cool. Thank you, Vanessa. That was amazing. Especially that last slide where you're talking about, if I'm not getting the interviews, then I need to work on my portfolio. If I'm not getting, past those, I got to work on my process. So fantastic insights. Absolutely love that. So next up, we got our next panelist, Nasha Torres, who is a product designer at Grammarly, where she focuses on user intelligence and outcome focused experiences for their consumer based products. Previously at Square and Google Creative Lab, her design journey has recently led her to ship her first flagship product, Grammarly Desktop, while currently leading design for a new sector on her team. Her favorite part of the design process is simply making very cool things with very cool people. When she isn't designing, she's most likely exploring food and art scene in San Francisco, reading up on fashion, and making music with her producer, Furby, I think it's Furby, to kick off her childhood dream of becoming a streaming artist, which I know, Nasha, too, you have your first single coming up, releasing soon. So, feel free to speak on that too. I'm going to follow you and take it away, Nasha.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Mickey. You know so much about me. But hey, everyone, I'm super excited to be talking to you about networking and just giving you tips on what helped me. So yeah, let's kick it off. So to start, I kind of just want to quickly go over my design journey and how I got to Grammarly, just so you understand like who I am as a designer. So actually in school, I started off as a bio major, like Vanessa said. Not everyone comes from design. I was super confused on what I wanted to do until I found new media design. So shout out to new media design because this panel is full of new media designers. And then in about 2 years, I got my first internship at Google Creative Lab. It was an amazing experience. After I graduated, I also got the opportunity to contract at Square. And then that ultimately led me to being a product designer at Grammarly. But the point of saying all this is to also say that I actually got all of these jobs through networking and because I knew someone in those jobs that connected me. So that's kind of why I'm super passionate about networking and want to help everyone else. So to start, I just want to say you have to figure out how much you want to invest into the process. So like Vanessa, I am a huge introvert. I'm super shy. The idea of networking freaked me out. We would go to networking events with friends and I would be the one in the corner, kind of just like not wanting to talk to anyone, super scared to approach people. But I ultimately knew that I wanted to make meaningful connections. I really did want to feel like I was a part of something and wanted to feel like I was a legitimate designer. And that meant like actually connecting with other designers and actually contributing to my community. And so I knew that I had to push myself to network, even if I wasn't too comfortable with that. So to help me get over that anxiety of talking to people, because again, I'm super shy, I thought of networking as more of a low effort to high effort thing that you can do. So pretty much you can do a lot of things that may fit your comfort level in the moment, which I'll talk about later in the presentation. But to start off, I do want to say all these tips that I'm sharing are just what helps me. There are millions of ways to network, but the most important thing is that you're just respectful and you're kind to the people that you're approaching, but because these are ultimately human beings. You want to approach someone with kindness and respect. You don't want to come off as demanding or expecting things from them. So I'll just say that before I move on. But one low effort thing that you can do if you are scared of networking is that you should just follow designers on socials. So what I did was I made a Twitter account and immediately started following all of the people that I looked up to. I looked at a lot of case studies online from Behance and pretty much just like found these people's socials and connected with them. Sometimes they also connect with you back. So that's really cool. Just an easy, super way to just network and, get yourself out there and also look at what other people are doing. I was super excited about just figuring out what people were working on. I wanted to find inspiration as well. So, networking has a lot of layers. There's a lot of opportunity to just talk to people and also become a better designer in general. Another thing you can do is reach out to learn new skills. As I said, I was forcing myself to connect with people on social media, but also whenever I saw something that I was super interested in, I would just simply contact that person. I would cold email them, or I would find their Twitter handle, message them on Twitter and say, hey, I really liked your case study when you did this. I was wondering how you did this specific thing. So one example was I love 3D modeling. So I was super curious on how a lot of people just work their light fixtures. So I would simply message that, like, hey, how did you do this? And a lot of people respond. So you'd be surprised with like how much people actually want to help you and how much response you'll actually get from that. So it not only is an opportunity for you to learn new skills, but again, to connect with these people, get to know the people behind the work itself. Another thing you can do that's more of a higher effort thing, but still pretty, casual, is just to schedule one-on-ones with people in the industry. And I think this is super important. As I said earlier, just be respectful when you approach people. Ultimately, everyone in design and everyone in product in general are super busy people. They have their 9 to 5. A lot of people have kids outside of their work and they have lives. So I would say when you are approaching these people, just be cognizant that, they're offering their time for free and you need to be respectful of that. Another thing you want to remember is that you don't always have to connect with people for something professional. So I was actually asking a lot of people to just have a coffee chat with me because I really wanted to get to know who they are as a designer. It wasn't even because I was asking them to review my portfolio or I was asking for something specific. I really just wanted to get to know them. And a lot of people, again, responded and will respond. Sometimes they won't, and that's totally okay. But I don't think there's anything wrong with just reaching out and trying to make that contact in general. But if you are going to ask about something or if you're going to reach out about something regarding your work, I will say be very specific with what you're asking. So a lot of the times when I needed help with my portfolio as I was a student, I just needed advice on what to do, I would reach out and say, hey, I was wondering if the visuals in my case studies were strong enough, or, if the type is legible, if it's accessible. And so I would say when you are reaching out for something, be very specific about the kind of feedback that you want, because that's super important. You shouldn't just be like, hey, can you review my portfolio? A lot of the times you don't understand what kind of feedback you want. So just be very specific with that. Another thing you can do is sign up for programs. So back when I was a student, I signed up for a generation design program through A16Z. This is how I met my mentor for years. She's my favorite person. We got connected through that program and it was totally free to sign up. So I would say just find these programs. I found A16Z through Facebook. I was in a random design Facebook group and they posted about it. And I signed up. I didn't expect anything to happen with that, but I got the best opportunities to work with, and just professionals in the industry. I connected with Mel, again, my favorite person, and she's still currently my mentor. So I know my other friends also signed up for programs such as Kleiner Perkins Fellowship. You can also look at the Interact programs. So pretty much be on the lookout for all these programs that can connect students to professional people who are professional in the industry. Another thing is attending conferences and talks. So I know a huge conference that a lot of people from my university attended was FITC. That was, of course, pre-pandemic when these in-person events were still happening. But now that there's a lot of talks that are virtual, they're easier to sign up for, and they're also more accessible. So I would say just try to sign up for a lot of conferences and talks if you want to. It's again, low effort thing to do now that everything is through your laptop. So it's just a good opportunity to hear what other people in the industry are working on, and also connect with them after the talk is over. So this one I would say is a super important tip and is the one that helps me the most. I would say take advantage of your current role. So when I was at Google Creative Lab, I felt super inspired because I was working with the most talented people I've ever met. They were just brilliant and I really love that environment. So what I would do is every week I try to get coffee with 2 designers from Creative Lab and just get to know them and connect with them through Instagram, again, Twitter. And what helped me was just staying in contact with them and maintaining all those relationships that I had made through my internship. So if I saw that someone was in San Francisco Or, I was in New York City, I'd be like, hey, would you want to grab lunch? Or, do this, offer your time, and they would offer theirs as well. But yeah, I pretty much just really wanted to make sure that I was staying in contact with the people that I had met through my internships. And also they were super helpful because when I graduated into the pandemic, it was hard for me to find a job. All the job postings were hiring senior designers. Obviously, I was a junior designer at the time, and I felt like I was hitting a brick wall. But then I was able to contact the people I had met at Google Creative Lab and at Square, and I'm like, hey, I'm having a hard time finding a job. I'm wondering if you have any connections anywhere. And probably at least 6 people like referred me, gave me referrals, like connected me to people who are currently hiring, and that helped a lot. So I would say make sure that you're forming these connections and just taking advantage of the opportunities you have while you're interning. And this one was more so just for me and what I value. I identify as Latinx. And so I was trying to find people like myself and who I connected with. And so one website was Latinx Who Design. Pretty much this website was super useful because I cold emailed probably like 10 to 20 people on that website saying, hey, like, I just want to chat. I want to get to know you as a designer, how you got to where you are currently. And a lot of people actually responded. I made a lot of friends through this website. I have a lot of mentors through this website as well. So I would say just really try to find your people, try to find your tribe and the people that you ultimately want to maintain these relationships with. And as Vanessa said, another website that's helped me as well was Cofolios. It was just a good way for me to connect with other students in different universities, see what kind of projects they were doing, what their portfolios looked like. And a lot of us scheduled meetings with each other. So I was able to just meet a lot of new people. And with this, again, saying all of this, I would say, make yourself discoverable online. That's a really good way to network and super important when you're trying to expand your network. So I actually signed up for Latinx Who Design and I put myself up on portfolios. So people were actually emailing me and contacting me saying, hey, I want to chat. So not only was I reaching out to people, but because I made myself and my work discoverable and accessible, I was able to connect with the people that were also messaging me. So let's say those things. And after I said all this, and you're still feeling anxious in that work, you're like, well, I don't know where to start. I'm still feeling pretty nervous. One thing that helped is just thinking of networking as building your community. As I said, the idea of networking seems super daunting. It seems like a very professional thing to do. But ultimately, like I just wanted to, again, build meaningful relationships, build these connections with people. I essentially saw it as making friends. Like I didn't want to see it as, an opportunity to get a new job, which it can help with. But I saw it as more of just getting to know more people in the industry so that, I have places to look for inspiration. I have people who are willing to, I guess, work with me and jam with me on certain things. So just think of it as building your community. That's also why I love Figma, because they do emphasize design as a community. So yeah, I hope these tips were helpful. And that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you so much, Nasha. I think that was absolutely perfect. Especially just like the way that you ended with community, building community, not just approaching people because they can give you a job, but just trying to build real relationships. So really good advice. Next up, we have Stephanie. Stephanie Liu is a user experience designer at Amazon AWS, their web services, their cloud computing platform. She works with teams of engineers and product managers to design software tools for AWS's global customer base. Although she has a visual design background, her current work constantly challenges her with the hybrid of user research and digital product design. Also, I had the pleasure of being able to work with Stephanie on past research projects, which was amazing over at RIT. So I'm going to be handing it over to Stephanie.
Hi,
and
guys.
Stephanie, floor is yours.
Thank you for the introduction. So now that we've talked about making your portfolio stand out and how to network, I'm going to talk about once you get your foot in the door, my favorite part of the process, which is interviewing. Also, if you have interviews, congratulations, you've already done something good. So I wanted to open on a main piece of advice that was definitely the best advice I was ever given. And every time before I go to like a one-on-one portfolio review at a job fair or a behavioral interview, I have this in my head. And it's that an interview is just a conversation with another human being. So even though, unlike the others, I identify as someone who's pretty extroverted, I was still like really scared from a student perspective. Like, my mind just put these people on super tall pedestals and kept emphasizing how different we were and how much more experience and expertise they had. And overall, it just increased my anxiety about essentially just talking to another human being. I just wanted to emphasize that like these people, they understand where you're coming from. They were probably you and at one point. And even though, you know, you're trying to impress them and you should treat them really well, you should kind of see these people as maybe like potential coworkers or friends in the future. So a little bit about me before I dive into my top interviewing tips. So I am actually from a fine arts background, and user experience designers can come from a lot of different fields, as said before. Like I know psychology, cognitive science, like even engineering, but I definitely started from a graphic designer's lens. And two main reasons why I moved into product design is one, that I really wanted to emphasize my relationship with technology, and I wanted to move forward with that instead of being behind. And then the second more main reason is that I realized later in my college career and through my internship at Amazon that I wanted to more work with higher level ideas and not as much with pixel pushing. So it was through my internship that exposed me to the first time of working with people of different roles, such as product managers and developers. And I feel like at the time, it really hit home to me how important user experience is in the life cycle of a product. So not even just about the end product, but molding the actual feature along the way. And I feel like in general, it's just made me feel more powerful and important than any other role. And I just generally realized that I wanted to be the person that, you know, deals with the idea and hands it off to someone else instead of the other way around. So my first main tip is that employers are not just hiring a portfolio, but a person. And basically, like, employers are interested in the way that you think and how personable you are, or else they wouldn't interview you. They would just hire a portfolio. So basically, they're looking for someone who can actively coexist in the ecosystem of their company, like in the day-to-day, but also like move the company forward. And I think overall, you just want to come off as someone that someone wants to work with and have traits such as humility, ambition, and confidence. And those are not necessarily things you can just get by looking at a portfolio. So make sure to try to embody those principles in an interview. The next one is definitely based on past experiences, and I feel like everyone has been there, but you ever get those questions in interviews where you're like, I have never possessed this knowledge in my head at any point. I definitely did not know the answer to or which questions they would ask me that would leave me potentially speechless. But every interview, I would know kind of the mentality to put myself in when I was asked those questions. And I'll try to tell you how I approach that. So basically, anytime you're given a question you don't know the answer to, use it as a jumping point to talk about something else. So talk about an area of potential growth or curiosity. Like basically like own up to not knowing the answer, but like also you can emphasize like that's why you want this specific job and you're a work in progress. So it's okay. Like explain like, how is it that you don't know this? And like, what are you actively doing right now or in the near future so that you have this answer in the future? So overall, like the best thing you can do is take an, I don't know, and turn it into you talking about a potential goal of yours. So the third main tip is that you should always have some personal anecdotes in your back pocket. And this also has to do with preparing yourself. So funny story, I was talking to a friend of mine about making this presentation on behavioral interviewing, and he was like, can you not prepare for behavioral interviews? Which I feel like is a common misconception. Like, yes, you can't exactly understand which questions they're specifically going to ask you, but you can definitely anticipate general themes. So behavioral interviewing is all about storytelling, and what you can do before each interview is just run through some of your personal anecdotes in your head. Like, for example, they're probably going to ask you, when was a time where you stepped up to a leadership position when you didn't have to? Your response to failure, teamwork, and, where you went the extra mile. So it's all just about like knowing yourself to prepare yourself. If you know that you're going to blank in the moment, you should definitely have some of these stories in your back pocket just so that they arise easier on the spot. So now I'm going to go through some of my personal quick tips. So the first is to stand out with questions. This kind of relates to preparing for interviews, but I feel like less common place to think about shining is as at the end of an interview. So basically, like, the interviewer wants to know that you're interested and curious about a lot of aspects of the company. And it also just shows effort that you try to come up with specific questions. Like, for example, how much cross collaboration is there between different roles and teams shows that you're thinking about you existing in their ecosystem. And the worst thing you can say ever, which was definitely me in like my first 2 interviews, was they're like, oh, do you have any questions? And I'm like, not right now. So I come into every interview with a whole list of general questions and also specific ones. The next one is don't be afraid to pause. And what I mean by this is if you're asked a question that's definitely a hard question, don't be afraid to take a couple seconds and take a deep breath. I've even asked people to repeat a question for me because I can almost guarantee that anything you say right off the cuff, if you're panicking, is not going to be as calm, collected, or showcasing the best version of yourself. So overall, don't be afraid to take that moment. The last one, it seems kind of obvious, but you should really be acting like you want the job. Employers want to hire someone that sounds grateful and is looking forward to fitting in their ecosystem. And especially if you want to have multiple offers on the table, even if this job isn't exactly your first option, you should be treating all of these potential jobs as a different route in your life for a different kind of learning. So overall, just really make it known that you're interested in working in that environment in the future. So a last parting piece of advice, and this is definitely from my personal experience, but have you ever, been doing a presentation or an interview and you're looking at the person who's judging you and you're like, this person hates me. They look so bored. I don't know what's going on. I call it the poker face. But here's the thing, I have definitely gotten offers from having an interview that from someone who looks like that. So just overall, don't let it affect how you present yourself. You should be passionate, energetic, and confident, and just trust that the process will follow through. So if you have any more questions about behavioral interviews, I'm really passionate about it. So you can definitely reach out to me. But yeah, I'm going to hand it off to Gabe, who's going to talk about succeeding at an internship.
All right. Thank you, Stephanie. I really like the part, just how you started off, just humans talking to humans. And I often think that sometimes my poker face is just me thinking about lunch. So I'm there in the interview and you got to remember the person that you're talking to is a human. They got their own stuff too, so don't take it personal. All right, so next up we got Gabe. Gabe currently works at Google as a human robotics designer at the X Moonshot Factory division and as a design lead for the YouTube Trends and Explore teams. Between both roles, he works with engineers, researchers, and other creatives to build the next generation of autonomous helper robots and crafts exploratory experiences within YouTube. He's also previously worked at Microsoft on the HoloLens team, and innovation has always been part of his design journey. Though based in San Francisco, being a digital nomad is what makes him happy. Buying plane tickets, bouncing around places, eating good food, and making friends anywhere are all part of his daily satisfactions. All right, so Gabe, I'm going to hand it off to you. The stage is yours.
Awesome. Thank you, Miguel. And thank you to the people who talked previously before me. Like you said, I'm going to be talking about how you can ace that internship. So Nasha, Vanessa, and Stephanie talked about, how to network, how to interview, and how to present yourself well if you're an introvert or an extrovert. So once you get there, what do you expect, right? So like Miguel said before too, I currently work at Google. I work on 2 different teams. I work at YouTube as a lead designer, and I also work part-time at the X team on some human robotics interaction design. Cool stuff, but what got me there? And it's honestly because of internships for my case. I don't know about how the other people in the panel here got their internships, but I, had a great experience with both of it, had great connections, and I was able to land some great full-time gigs. And I'm going to help you guys figure that out. How do you get from internship to full-time, but also more importantly, how do you ace that internship? So yeah, the next 2 slides, I'll talk about the myths and beliefs you have about internships, what to expect from it, and how to succeed. And yeah, so it's your first day, you're feeling a little bit scared, don't know what to expect. So here are some helpful tips to navigate through those few days and weeks. So the first thing you want to make sure to do is to familiarize yourself with the environment. So when I interned at Google and Microsoft. So before the first day, I went to the actual building from the outside, just got myself familiar with the environment, figured out the bus schedule, and figured out which door to enter. It's like all that stuff that's pretty no one talks about, but it's really, really important to know where you're going. You also want to make sure you find your badge, go to the receptionist, find those elevators, and find where your desk is, right? And in the process of doing that, you'll probably start noticing a bunch of other lost interns around the building. So tip number 2 is always to make sure to be friends with your interns. They're going to be your day one. They're going to help you through everything and understand what you're going through. So make sure to talk with them, walk with them, eat with them. Or if you're an introvert, just make sure you're linked up with them. They'll help you no matter what. And just, either think of them as coworkers, but also think of them as friends. That's very important to me. So yeah, once you meet the interns and you navigate your way to the desk, you probably will start trickling in and start meeting the team. So make sure you introduce yourself and make known that you're a new person here and that you're valued. And you can probably do this. It depends on when you meet the people, but it can be at your team's first stand-up meeting, or you can take the initiative to schedule those meetings with them. But what's most important though, out of the big team, is you want to really identify who your key collaborators are. So typically it's going to be your manager and your PMs and your eng team. So make sure you know who they are and make sure to chat with them, because they're going to help you understand the project. They're going to establish project timelines. They'll help you understand how to succeed and what to do to succeed in an internship. So make sure you chat with these people. They will make you the best design you can at the internship. Next tip is to not only familiarize yourself with the team and environment, also the project, right? This is what's gonna be the defining moment of your internship. So make sure you do that. Typically there are 2 types of projects. There's a starter project and a actual project. I'm not sure if the other panelists here did like a starter project, but basically the starter project is a smaller scale one where it helps you onboard with the team expectations and something that is very doable in a short span of time, just to get yourself familiarized with the workspace. And then you'll get into the main project, right? So make sure you familiarize yourself with what that is. You can look up past research, look up old PRDs, figure out who's attached to the project, which lens from the previous slide, who are you working with? And yeah, once you do, you'll have a full arsenal of context to help you succeed. Tip number 6, use the intern card. Now, this is not like an actual card. I wish it was, but it's kind of like a concept that people in industry use. So like when you're an intern, you have so much power quote unquote, to meet people, because people love talking about themselves. People love to get to know the new people on the team and the new interns. So use this card and literally message your coworkers, message, even the CEO of the company if you have to. I've done it before. It really, it works. Just be like, hey, my name is Gabe. I'm new here. Would you like to get, coffee and chat about life or your journey? So this is a helpful tool to network, to connect with people, and to be that social butterfly if you want to. Depends. So yeah, so that's what you should expect in the first few days, right? Like, you're gonna meet the team, meet the project, meet the interns. So make sure you keep that consistent, make sure you're diligent, make sure you are working hard and establishing yourself with the rest of the team, because at the midpoint of the internship, you're going to have like a mid-performance review. And this is basically like a conversation between your manager and you to see how well you're doing. So essentially, your manager is going to tell you, hey, you're doing a great job, or I think you should improve in this area. And here's the steps you need to take to get to a more successful ending. And this is really important because you want to make sure that if you want that full-time role, right, at the end of it, you want to make sure you are meeting the manager's expectations and your own expectations. And also take this time to voice any concerns you may have with the environment or with your project, or things that you feel still uncomfortable with. Maybe it's like hard for you to speak up at meetings, stuff like that. Make sure you chat with your manager on that. So yeah, last few tips on shining at your internship. So the previous tips, it's more about doing that consistently, but how else can you keep pushing yourself way to the end of the internship to make sure you do the best you can? And that's pretty simple. It's like, establish good relationships. You don't have to be an introvert, you don't have to be an extrovert to do this. Just make sure you are fun to work with, you're respectful, you're kind, and you're always open-minded and willing to work with others. It's very important to do that. Speak up in meetings. It's very important. And this is also a challenge for me, who is somebody who likes to, be extroverted, but it's, you have imposter syndrome. Like, you feel like you do not belong there, and you feel like asking questions and speaking up is a little bit difficult. So just try to push yourself every single day, which, blends into the next tip, which is to ask questions at those meetings. Your questions are not invalid. They probably, most of the time, other people have the same questions. And, you should just always be the dumbest person in the room in your own mind, because you should never be the smartest person in the room, because that makes you like an ego, makes you think you know everything, but it's important to ask those questions. Another tip that I use to succeed is to document everything. And I found this really important. So when I say document everything, I documented, logs of my meetings. I kept track of all the schedules and timelines that I wanted to complete at the end of the week. I documented, progress, updates on PRDs, and all that stuff. Because at the end of the internship, right, you might either have to hand off your project to the next team that's going to work on your project, or, you're going to have that chat with your manager that he's going to be like, so what did you do this whole summer? And then once you have like documentation, everything, it's an easier transfer at the end of it all. And yeah, my last tip is just to have fun. It's an internship. It's 3 months. Typically, it's your one time in that summer to have fun, meet the people you want to meet the interns you want to be friends with, enjoy that summer, go to those outings, go to those team lunches, but more importantly, be yourself. That's how you're going to succeed at an internship. And with that, I'll throw it back to Miguel. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Gabe. That was amazing. I know I keep talking about everyone's last slide, but originally I was going to say the intern card was like amazing. Using the intern card when you're at the place, or like even when you're like new, just use your newbie card. It's a great way for you to just like learn new things. People are always willing to like help you out when they know that you are there, brand new. Okay, so we're going to have, we have some time for Q&A. I'm going to pull up some questions from many of you that have been in the Q&A little widget that we have here. So I'm actually going to kick it off with, here we go. Let's see. I have a question and I'm going to pose the question to like anybody at this point. So anyone feel free to chime in and let me know what you think about this. So I have a question. Well, actually, it's more just a request of advice. So someone asking about advice for starting an internship while remote. Does anybody have any advice that they would give to someone who's starting an internship while remote? Go for it, Steph.
I guess I can speak. So during my internship, I was sheltering in place because it was March 2020. So that was definitely something that was going through my head, along with, like severe like worries about like non-productivity. I was also coming directly from the student perspective, and I was looking forward to a 9 to 5 internship. But then what happened was it was all remote, and I was kind of still implanted in all of my college messed up sleep cycle. So I guess my overall advice was that in the beginning, it was definitely hard to get over the idea that I wouldn't be in person, having those spontaneous interactions with other like coworkers, and just learning things socially, also just like growing up as a person when you go to an internship. But I think overall, like the industry today is way more prepared for you to start in a remote internship. Like most jobs, a lot of them are like remote permanently now. And I think that you can easily learn just as much through a remote setting, but definitely you have to work harder to reach out to your coworkers. Like, I think the idea that you can't physically get coffee with someone kind of like hurt me a little bit at the beginning. But I think one-on-one video chats are almost just as good. Just, push yourself to do those. And they're actually like easier to schedule, and people have more time now because they don't have to like go meet you somewhere. And you can also connect with people that you never would have connected with in the first place. Like I had a mentor in like Amsterdam. So I think that you can definitely just get way more different perspectives in the remote internship format that we have now.
Cool. Thank you. That was really insightful. All right, so we have another question here. Actually, there was a number of questions that kind of took on like the same kind of vein with regards to. So I'll ask like the first one. It's just with those that are have work in their portfolio that might not necessarily be for a client. So if you were to say, like, let's say, here, Nash, I'll ask you the question directly. How do you handle work in your portfolio, either that, you can't demonstrate because you did it for, like a big company, and or just like highlight work that you might have done that's like a personal kind of project? Like, how do you make that meaningful in a portfolio?
Yeah, for me, in my experience, I wasn't like, for example, when I was interviewing for full time, I wasn't able to show anything I had done at Google. So I was like, well, what am I supposed to do now? But in instances like those, I would say highlight your process and highlight, like how you would work with those cross-functional partners that you'll work with on a daily basis. So I would kind of like take like abstract it a little bit, make visuals, make my own visuals for like that specific project that I can't show, and talk about it more at a higher level. But just make sure that you are talking about, how you work as a designer, how you approach certain, I guess, design decisions. What would you do in specific situations? For example, if you're working with an engineer or you're working with other designers. So even though there might be instances where you can't show work, or even a passion project where it's very hypothetical, just make sure that you're highlighting that as like highlighting your process at a higher level, if that makes sense. So it's still possible, just show them what you can do as a designer, and how you think as a designer as well.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, like that whole bit, like, the higher level, kind of like abstracting the concepts so you're not actually showing the work itself. I think that that's really important. So a couple more questions here. Thanks everybody for being so patient with your questions. I would say to Vanessa, what do you think about like individuals who might not have had a formal education that are either like self-taught or going through like a boot camp process? What would you have any like advice for them trying to break into the field?
In what respect?
So like let's say either portfolio or like resume. So those who might not necessarily have gone to, like a university or like had a formal education, like what ways, and do you have any like advice for them on how to shine?
Oh gosh. Yeah, that's a good question because I am coming from a very biased perspective where I did have a formal education. Can you come back to me? Sorry.
No worries, no worries. I mean, like, even think too about like coworkers that you may be working with. I think Gabe, he wants to speak on this. Gabe, go for it.
Yeah, I can take this question a little bit. I personally, well, I'm also biased. I had a formal education on this, but I was gonna say my brother, he did not have formal education. He currently is a UX writer at Facebook or Meta, whatever you want to call it now. He was previously a journalist, but he did not like the career that he uh, had at that point because the compensation was not fair for him. But he still loved writing. So what he did was he did a UX boot camp for writing specifically. Uh, I think he found it through LinkedIn. I'm not quite sure, but it's possible. He did that boot camp for I think 3 months. They helped him, create two good projects, actual projects that had actual clients. And then once that boot camp ended, he, worked on his website, built it up. It took him a few months and interviews to land, his final role. But it's really possible to take those UX boot camps, and you don't need formal education. I think, and I tell people this all the time. It's all about uh, your work, the output of work you do is the people you know, and how you present yourself. I think those three are more important for our field specifically. We don't really need an education anymore.
Yeah. Vanessa, you want to add to that?
Yeah, two parts. I was just thinking, I also worked with somebody previously. She had no formal education. She went through boot camp, and there are like apprenticeship programs that a lot of companies design specifically for people who are like transitioning into the industry, and they take that into consideration when you're applying. So I agree, you don't need any formal education. And also I think like a lot of product design comes down to like problem solving for like real world problems. So you can also just show off like, hey, Google what the design process is, research, define the problem, do your research, like create solutions, grab people from the real world and test it with them and change your design based on their input. I think as long as you can apply like that formula to any problem you solve, that also shows like, hey, you can do the design process, and it just comes down to them taking a chance on you with how you work and with your teammates. With an engineer, how do you implement that solution? With a PM, how do you like pivot if like you don't have the right resources? I think all that comes when you are working, and don't worry about that part. Again, like Nasha said, maybe take a step back and think about it at a higher level. But yeah, they're looking for your potential, and uh, if they can see that you can perform your role, then they'll like take you in, and so you can like work and develop those like soft skills and team working relationships.
That's awesome. I'm also just gonna chime in here too. So like I have taught informal, like, like higher education. I've also been like a boot camp instructor. And like I've actually seen like a lot of success with like the boot camps too. So like self-learners as well. I've actually had individuals that would like come in their first year and then leave their first year just because they pursued like a really deep passion. So like I had a student come in once and they were like really into WordPress. I mean, this is back, when WordPress was like, really, really big. And, basically came in their first year to university and realized that, their self taught version is going better, and they ended up going to work for Mozilla and Google. I can actually attest to, like, several of my coworkers not necessarily having a formal education. So I want to identify that, like, the one of the cool things about this like industry is, just the many different ways that you can kind of like get educated, that you can develop your skill sets. And one thing that I would say too is the more diverse your skill set, even if you are coming from another industry, if you're coming from like writing, or if you're coming from like a different type of management, there's so much opportunity to leverage those other skills in how they interoperate, sort of like inner product design into UX. So, never downplay, like your own skills or what you already know. So I think we're about at time. Thank you all. Thank you, panelists. Vanessa, Nasha, Gabe, Steph, for joining us and imparting this. Just so you all know, this will be recorded. Oh, let me see. Here we go. I do want to make y'all give y'all a reminder that Figma is free for students and teachers. Figma.com/education to learn more. If you do have questions, hit us up at education@figma.com. Future live streams will be at figma.com/events. If you have an idea for an upcoming live stream, feel free to email us at community@figma.com, and make sure you show our panelists some love. Thank you all for attending. This has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.